You're good at your job. Maybe you're exceptional at it. The emails go out before sunrise. The deadlines don't just get met, they get buried under work nobody asked for. Your calendar is a wall, and behind the wall is another wall, and somewhere underneath the noise of all of it, there's a voice that never fully goes quiet. Not yet, not enough, keep moving. People see this from the outside and they name it. Ambitious. Driven. Disciplined. But they don't see the thing that happens when someone asks what you'd do if you could finally rest. The small, specific panic when a weekend clears out and there's nothing on it. The way you've slowly lost the ability to sit in a room without a task in front of you, the way silence has started to feel less like peace and more like pressure with nowhere to go. You don't work because you love to work. You work because stopping is the thing you don't trust yourself to do. And that part almost never gets named. There's a particular kind of person who fills their life the way some people fill silence, automatically, without asking why. Their mornings start before the alarm. They're composing emails in the shower, running the day's agenda while coffee brews, mentally already somewhere else before their feet have hit the floor. By 9 a.m. they've done what most people reach by noon. By noon, they're behind, not by any external measure, but by the one inside that never resets. They don't take lunch, or they take it at their desk with something open on the screen. They eat fast and feel quietly guilty about the minutes they weren't producing something. Which is, to be clear, not how lunch is supposed to work. Evenings fill up too, side projects, reading that doubles as research, preparation for a tomorrow that hasn't happened yet. Not because the job demands it. Because the alternative is a quiet room and whatever's in it. And that, the specific discomfort of stillness, is the thing worth staying with. For most people, rest is neutral. The day ends, the body takes over, the mind softens. But for some people, rest has a texture. It feels like exposure. Like something unguarded starting to surface that was being held underwater all day by the weight of useful work. Work isn't the passion. Work is the container, and the question is what's inside it, and why it keeps building pressure. Here's what most people miss. Busyness is one of the oldest psychological strategies we have. When the meetings end and the inbox quiets and the house goes still, the mind turns back toward itself. And for certain people, in certain configurations, that isn't relief. It's arrival at the exact feeling they spent the whole day outrunning. Grief that was never processed. A slow-growing suspicion that none of this is quite what they meant. A loneliness that colleagues and calendar invites can muffle but not dissolve. Something older, from further back, the wordless sense that if you stop moving, something will catch up with you. Psychologists call this experiential avoidance, the instinct to escape internal experience through external behavior. Researchers who study it describe it as one of the most reliable predictors of long-term psychological difficulty, not because the strategy fails, but because it works too well. It's the mental equivalent of turning up the music so you can't hear the noise from the apartment next door. Works fine, until you need to sleep. The brain gets occupied. The feeling gets displaced. The day ends without incident. And so you do it again tomorrow, because it worked, and the pattern never has to be examined because it keeps delivering results. Until it doesn't. Until the container can't hold any more. This didn't start at work. It almost never does. Think about the house where love had a shape, and the shape was performance. Not cruel, maybe not even conscious, but consistent. Affection that arrived warmly after a good report card and went slightly quiet after a bad one. A parent who asked, "How was school?" but what they really meant was, "What did you do there that I can be proud of?" A child in that house learns fast. The nervous system, which is simply a recording device for what keeps you safe, files it all away. Stillness means falling short. Falling short means distance. Moving means I'm okay. That child doesn't grow out of it just by growing up. They carry the logic forward, dressed in adult clothes, running it on adult stakes. The job becomes what the report card was. The output becomes the proof. And rest, genuine rest, unearned rest, rest that isn't followed by something productive, starts to feel less like a right and more like a risk. What the story usually skips is the thing running alongside it, how ordinary these beginnings usually are. Not dramatic. Not textbook trauma. Just a child who received the message, quietly, repeatedly, unintentionally, that what they produced mattered more than who they were. And a nervous system that believed it, because a nervous system at age 7 doesn't have the option of skepticism. The urgency that drives the adult isn't about the job. It's about survival. The stakes are just no longer what they were. Somewhere in the years of this, the strategy became a self. That's the harder part. You can tell someone they're using work to avoid their feelings, and they'll nod. Maybe they'll even agree. But watch what happens right after, the flicker behind the eyes, because if the work is avoidance, then what's underneath it? Who are they when they're not producing anything? Ask someone who runs like this what they enjoy outside of work, and they'll list things they used to do. Ask them what they do with 3 unscheduled months, and they'll describe a project. Ask them who they are, not the title, not the output, not what they're working toward, and there's a pause that has real weight in it. Because for a lot of people who work at this pace, identity and productivity aren't two things kept in adjacent rooms. They're the same room. The scene between them has been painted over so many times it's no longer visible. This is why the pattern resists interruption. It isn't just a coping mechanism. It's load-bearing architecture. The work is holding up a version of self that was constructed when the alternative felt genuinely dangerous. To rest isn't to take a break. For some people, it's to risk not knowing who's there when the work stops. People will call this ambition. You've probably let them, because the story is useful. There's something seductive about a narrative where the wound and the strength are the same thing, where the fear becomes the fuel, and the thing that hurt you is also the thing that built you. And it's not entirely false. The output is real. The accomplishments exist. The skill that developed under all that pressure is genuine. What the story usually skips is the thing running alongside it, always, in parallel, the relationships that went underfed because there was always one more thing. The health that shifted in increments too small to alarm anyone while you were watching the metrics instead. The version of yourself you kept intending to return to, after this project, after this year, after things finally settle, and things never settle, because you keep filling the space where settling would live. There's a difference between someone who works hard because it's genuinely meaningful and someone who works compulsively because the quiet on the other side is something they learned not to trust. The outputs can look identical from the outside. You can tell them apart by one question: can they stop? Not take a vacation. Not sleep. Stop, without guilt, without agenda, without the low-grade static of productivity anxiety running underneath the supposed rest. That capacity. That specific one. Real rest requires something most high-output people haven't had reason to build, a tolerance for their own company, without an agenda. And the reason that's difficult isn't abstract. The feelings waiting in the quiet aren't abstractions either. They have shapes. They have histories. For one person it's grief that got deferred so many times it calcified. For another it's a creeping recognition that the life they've built reads better from the outside than it feels from the inside, impressive in outline, somewhat hollow in the living of it. For another it's something older, the child who never quite received the message that they were enough without the performance, without the proof, without the grade. Rest forces encounter. An encounter requires a kind of courage that no productivity framework accounts for. The person who finally sits with what they've been running from is doing something harder than anything on their calendar. There's no metric for it. No deliverable. No moment where someone tells you that you did it well. Just the private reckoning of someone who stayed still long enough to ask, what am I actually afraid of? And what would happen if I let myself find out? There's a version of you that exists somewhere past all this movement. Not a diminished version. Not a version with less to show. A version that works because the work carries actual meaning, not because stopping feels like falling through the floor. That version isn't waiting for a breakdown or a diagnosis or a week in the mountains where things finally clarify. It's waiting for you to get tired enough of running that you turn around and look at what's been behind you all this time. Most people never do. The calendar stays packed. The years accumulate. Life contracts to the perimeter of a to-do list, and somewhere inside all the output is a person who was very productive and not quite present for any of it. But you already know something is off. You've known for a while. It's why you're here, reading this, at whatever hour it happens to be. The question was never whether you were capable of doing more. The question was always what you were doing it instead of. You're not a workaholic. You're someone who learned that stopping wasn't safe. This is the psychology behind people who can't slow down, and what's really waiting in the quiet.